"Don't sign it," Risset whispered, her voice shaking as the pen hovered above the contract, while sirens screamed somewhere far below the glass walls of the penthouse. The city beneath them pulsed like a living organism, neon lights flickering, traffic snarling, rain slicing through the night like shattered glass. Bruno stood frozen, the weight of the moment pressing into his chest so hard it felt difficult to breathe. The paper in front of him wasn't just a contract. It was a door. Once opened, there would be no turning back. Minutes earlier, everything had seemed perfect. The penthouse smelled faintly of sandalwood and rain-soaked concrete, a scent Bruno had come to associate with Risset's quiet rituals, candles lit not for romance, but for grounding herself when the world grew too loud. Jazz hummed softly from hidden speakers, vinyl crackling like a heartbeat. Outside, the skyline shimmered, unaware that two lives were about to fracture and fuse at the same time. Bruno had always believed love was like music, improvised, messy, honest. You didn't calculate it, you felt it. Risset believed love was like art, painstaking, layered, every stroke intentional, even the mistakes. That difference had drawn them together long before money, headlines, or whispered rumors ever entered the room. He remembered the first night clearly, not as a beginning, but as an interruption. A studio session that ran past midnight, a broken piano key, a woman sitting cross-legged on the floor, humming softly as if she were afraid the walls might hear her secrets. "You play like you're running from something," she'd said without looking up. "And you sing like you're hiding," he'd replied. They had laughed then, a soft, surprised sound, two strangers recognizing something familiar in each other's wounds. Now, years later, laughter felt like a memory from another lifetime. Risset stepped closer, barefoot against the cold marble floor, her silk dress brushing softly against his wrist as she reached for the pen. Her fingers trembled, not with fear of failure, but with fear of success. "You don't see it yet," she said quietly. "This deal doesn't just want your music, it wants us, all of us." Bruno looked at her, really looked. The faint scar near her collarbone she never talked about. The dark circles she hid under makeup after nights spent rewriting melodies until dawn. The way she bit the inside of her cheek when she was scared she might be right. He had spent his whole life chasing sound. She had spent hers chasing control. And somewhere along the way, love had become a battlefield neither of them had prepared for. The knock at the door was sharp, authoritative, final. Bruno flinched. Risset didn't. "I'll handle it," she said, already moving, spine straight, chin lifted. This was the Risset the world didn't see, the one who didn't cry in public, who negotiated like a general, who cataloged betrayal before it had time to hurt her. The man who entered wore a smile too smooth to be trusted. Expensive suit, eyes that measured value in numbers, not people. "Time is money," he said, glancing at his watch. "And tonight, you're both about to become very expensive." Bruno felt something crack inside him then, not fear, not anger, but certainty. This was no longer about music, or love, or dreams. This was about survival. As the man spoke, Bruno's mind drifted backward through moments that had led them here. Late-night arguments over creative control, whispered phone calls Risset took on the balcony, the way success had slowly rewritten the rules of their relationship. Risset had always been afraid of losing herself. Bruno had always been afraid of losing love. Together, they had built something fragile and powerful, like a glass cathedral in the middle of a storm. The pen finally touched paper, but not to sign. Bruno pushed the contract away. Silence fell, heavy and electric. Risset's breath caught, not in relief, not in panic, but in recognition. This was the moment where romance stopped being a shelter and became a choice. The man's smile vanished. "You'll regret this," he said. Bruno stood, placing himself instinctively between Risset and the threat, heart pounding loud enough to drown out the city below. "Maybe," he said, "but at least we'll regret it together." Rain slammed against the windows like applause, or warning. Risset reached for his hand, gripping it tightly, grounding him, grounding herself. In that moment, she understood something terrifying and beautiful. Love wasn't the masterpiece. What they were about to build from it was. And it would cost them everything they thought they knew about trust, ambition, and each other. The night swallowed their reflection in the glass, two silhouettes standing at the edge of a future no one had written yet, where love would be tested, reshaped, and transformed into something far more dangerous than heartbreak. The elevator doors slammed shut with a metallic thud, sealing Bruno and Risset inside a narrow capsule of glass and steel as it began its slow descent, the city's glow sliding upward like a retreating tide. "You shouldn't have done that," Risset said, breaking the silence, her voice sharp but trembling underneath. "You embarrassed people who don't forget." Bruno laughed once, short and bitter. "I didn't do it for them." She turned to him then, really turned, her eyes burning. "Then for who? Me." "For us," he said without hesitation, "or whatever version of us is still breathing." The elevator hummed, each second stretching. Risset crossed her arms, a habit she'd had since her trainee days whenever she felt cornered. "You think this is romantic, standing up to sharks with nothing but pride and a guitar." "I think," Bruno replied, stepping closer, "that I've watched you disappear piece by piece every time someone promised you safety in exchange for silence." Her jaw tightened. "You don't know what I've sacrificed." "Then tell me," he said quietly, "because I'm tired of loving a mystery that keeps bleeding." The doors opened into the underground garage, cold air rushing in. Cameras blinked red. Somewhere, an engine roared to life. Risset grabbed his wrist and pulled him toward the car. "Get in," she said. "Now." They drove without music, rain hammering the windshield, the city blurring into streaks of white and gold. Finally, Risset spoke, her voice low, controlled, dangerous. "They came to me first," she said. "A year ago, they said your contracts were outdated, that you were leaving money on the table. They said if I helped, we could own everything." Bruno stared ahead. "And you listened." "I didn't say yes," she snapped. "I said I'd think. And I thought about what it's like to grow up being told you're replaceable," she said, the words cracking through her armor. "I thought about waking up one day and realizing love didn't protect us from being erased." The car stopped at a red light. Bruno turned to her. "So you tried to protect us by negotiating behind my back." "I tried to protect us by being smarter than them," she whispered. "But they don't negotiate, they collect." Silence fell again, heavier now, soaked in truth. When they reached the studio, it was past midnight. The building loomed dark, but inside, lights were still on. Someone was waiting. A woman leaned against the mixing console, heels clicking softly as they entered. Her smile was calm, predatory. "Risset," she said, "you didn't answer my calls." Risset stiffened. "You said tonight was optional." The woman laughed. "Nothing this big is optional." Bruno stepped forward. "Who are you?" She extended a hand he didn't take. "The reason your streams tripled last quarter. The reason every brand suddenly wants your name." Risset's voice shook. "You promised no ambushes." "And you promised cooperation," the woman replied smoothly. "Yet here we are." What followed wasn't shouting. It was worse. Precision, numbers, threats wrapped in compliments. Futures dangled like bait. Bruno felt anger rise, but beneath it, fear. Not of losing money, but of losing Risset to a version of herself shaped by survival instead of desire. "Enough," Risset said suddenly. "We're not signing anything. We're building our own platform." The woman raised an eyebrow. "With what leverage?" Risset looked at Bruno. For the first time, she didn't look afraid. "With our truth," she said, "and our audience." The woman's smile vanished. "You're making enemies." Risset smiled back, small and fierce. "We already had them." When the door finally closed behind the woman, Risset collapsed into a chair, hands shaking. Bruno knelt in front of her, taking her face gently, forcing her to look at him. "You don't have to fight alone," he said. Tears finally fell, silent, furious. "I don't know how to stop." "Then we learn," he replied. "Together." They stayed there until dawn, writing, arguing, crying, rebuilding everything from the ground up. Not lovers hiding from the world, but partners standing against it. By morning, exhaustion clung to them like smoke, but something else burned brighter beneath it: clarity. Love hadn't saved them. Choice had. And for the first time, Rissé believed that success didn't have to mean surrender, and Bruno believed that love could survive ambition without being devoured by it. Outside, the sun rose over a city that had no idea what was coming. The first scream came from Rissé's phone at 6:17 a.m. She didn't answer it. She was standing barefoot in the kitchen, staring at the coffee machine as if it had betrayed her, hands wrapped around a mug that had long gone cold. Bruno was at the piano in the living room, fingers hovering above the keys, frozen mid-chord, because he had felt it too. The shift, the air tightening, the silence before impact. The phone screamed again. Then Bruno's did. And then the studio screens lit up all at once. "Bruno," Rissé said slowly, her voice unnaturally calm. "Don't look." He looked anyway. Headlines bled across the screens in bold, merciless fonts. Anonymous sources, insider leaks, carefully edited clips. Words like manipulation, control, secret contracts, power imbalance. A photo of them arguing in the garage, cropped so his body blocked hers, framed to look like threat instead of instinct. Bruno's chest tightened. "They're rewriting us." Rissé finally answered her phone. She didn't say hello. "I warned you," the woman's voice purred on the other end. "You mistook visibility for power." Rissé's fingers dug into the marble counter. "You leaked private footage." "You leaked yourselves," the woman corrected. "Love makes people careless." Bruno snatched the phone. "You're trying to destroy us." A soft laugh. "No, I'm trying to separate you. The public will do the rest." The line went dead. Rissé slid down to the floor, back against the cabinet, breath shallow. "This is my fault." Bruno knelt beside her. "Stop." "I brought them into our lives," she whispered. "I thought I could control it." "You thought you could survive it," he said. "There's a difference." A knock thundered at the door. Then another. And another. By noon, the building was surrounded. Cameras, shouts, questions sharpened like knives. "Rissé, did you sign secret deals behind Bruno Mars' back?" "Bruno, is it true you threatened executives? Is your relationship real, or a business arrangement?" Inside, the studio felt smaller by the second. Rissé paced like a caged animal, tugging at her sleeves, then stopping, then starting again. "They're going to make me choose," she said suddenly. Bruno looked up. "Choose what?" "Who I am allowed to be," she said. "The victim, the mastermind, the girlfriend, the problem." He stood. "You don't owe them a role." She laughed, sharp and breaking. "You still think silence is dignity. Silence is guilt now." Her phone buzzed again. A message, one sentence. "Step away from him, and this stops." Rissé stared at the screen until the letters blurred. Bruno saw it. He didn't ask to read it. He already knew. "They want you to leave me," he said. Her voice barely worked. "They want me to erase you." Something ugly and old rose inside Bruno then. Something he'd buried since childhood. Since the first time he learned that love could be leveraged. "Then don't," he said. Rissé looked at him, tears streaming freely now. "They'll destroy your career." "They already are," he replied. "At least let it be for something real." She shook her head. "You don't understand. I've survived by disappearing before I'm pushed." "And I've survived by standing my ground even when it hurts," he said. "This is where we stop running from each other." For a long moment, neither spoke. The noise outside grew louder. The world demanded blood. Rissé wiped her face and stood straighter. "Then we talk." "To who?" "To everyone," she said. "Together." The live stream went live without warning. No makeup, no script, no manager approval. Rissé sat beside Bruno, hands visible, eyes red but steady. "They think love is a strategy," she began. "They think art is a product. They think fear is control." Bruno leaned forward. They were right about one thing: we were careless. Risay nodded. We trusted systems built to consume us. Silence stretched across millions of screens. But we're done letting other people tell our story, Bruno said. Risay took his hand. If this costs us everything, so be it. At least it will be ours. The comments exploded. Support, rage, doubt, belief, hatred, hope. The woman called again. Risay ignored it. When the stream ended, the studio felt eerily quiet. Bruno exhaled. That was terrifying. Risay laughed through tears. That was freedom. But freedom has a price. By nightfall, contracts were terminated. Endorsements vanished. Friends stopped calling. The building's power flickered once, twice, then steadied. Risay sat alone, on the balcony, city lights reflecting in her eyes like fractures. What if love isn't enough? She asked softly. Bruno joined her, wrapping a blanket around her shoulders. Then we make it enough. She leaned into him, exhausted, broken, unguarded. Somewhere in the city, deals were being rewritten, alliances shifting, vengeance brewing quietly. But for this moment, stripped of illusion and armor, they were no longer running from the question that had haunted them since the beginning. They were finally asking it together. And whatever came next would no longer be negotiated in silence. The backlash didn't come like a wave. It came like poison gas, silent, invisible, already inside their lungs before they realized they were choking. Risay woke up to silence that felt wrong. No notifications, no calls, no chaos, just an eerie stillness that made her chest tighten before her eyes even opened. Bruno was already awake, sitting on the edge of the bed, scrolling slowly, his jaw clenched so tightly it trembled. They're quiet, Risay said hoarsely. Bruno didn't look at her. That's worse. She reached for the phone on the nightstand, and the screen finally flooded with life. Emails marked urgent, contracts stamped terminated, headlines that pretended to be neutral while carving them open with precision. Risay read one out loud, her voice steady but empty. Sources close to the couple claim internal conflict, emotional instability, and unprofessional conduct. Bruno laughed, a low, humorless sound. Emotional instability, that's new. She kept reading. Industry insiders suggest Risay was the architect. Bruno Mars was the liability. That one landed. Bruno stood abruptly, packing. They're turning us against each other in public now. That's the plan, Risay replied. If they fracture us, they don't have to fight us. Her phone buzzed again. This time she answered. I told you this would happen, her manager said without greeting. You've become radioactive. Risay closed her eyes. So have you. A pause. They offered me a way out. Bruno froze. Risay opened her eyes slowly. You're leaving. I'm surviving, the manager said. You should too. Separate statements, controlled distance. Let the narrative cool. Risay's voice hardened. You want me to deny him? I want you to save yourself. She hung up. Bruno didn't ask what was said. He watched her carefully, like someone watching glass under pressure, knowing it could shatter or become something sharper. They want us apart, she said. They always did, he replied. The doorbell rang. Neither of them moved. Then it rang again. Bruno opened the door to a man he hadn't seen in years. His former producer, eyes tired, hands stuffed into his coat pockets like he didn't trust them not to betray him. I shouldn't be here, the man said, but you should know. Risay crossed her arms. Know what? They're offering solo redemption arcs, he said. Risay as the misunderstood genius, Bruno as the reckless lover who held her back. Bruno scoffed. That's generous. The producer shook his head. They'll make it convincing. Risay felt something cold settle in her stomach. And if we refuse? They'll keep escalating, he said quietly. They don't need you successful. They just need you compliant or destroyed. After he left, the apartment felt smaller. The walls seemed to listen. Risay went to the kitchen, opened a cabinet, then closed it again without taking anything out. Her hands were shaking now, the adrenaline finally cracking. "I've been here before," she said. "This moment, when the world decides who you're allowed to be." Bruno leaned against the counter. "And what did you do last time?" "I disappeared," she whispered. "I survived by becoming less." He stepped closer. "And did it save you?" She didn't answer. Instead, she looked at him, really looked at him, and something terrifying passed between them. The understanding that love wasn't the threat anymore. Fear was. "They're right about one thing," Risay said suddenly. "We can't win their game." Bruno raised an eyebrow, so we flipped the board. Her lips curved into a dangerous smile, the kind that only appeared when she stopped asking for permission, from the world or from herself. "We don't deny," she said. "We don't defend, we expose." Bruno felt a spark ignite. "You want to burn it all down." "I want to show how it's built," she corrected. "Every clause, every threat, every manipulation." "That will end careers," he said. "Yes," she replied, "including ours." Bruno studied her, searching for hesitation. There was none, just resolve scarred and earned. "Then we do it right," he said. "No half-truths, no curated pain." They spent the night digging, old emails, voice notes, contracts with predatory language hidden beneath polished promises. Risay listened to recordings she'd sworn never to revisit. Bruno read messages that made his stomach turn. At one point, Risay stopped, pressing her palms to the desk, breathing hard. "They made me believe I was powerful because I was useful," she said. "I hate that part of me." Bruno touched her shoulder. "You were trying to protect something you loved." She turned, eyes wet. "I was trying to control it." "Same difference," he said gently. "Different wound." When dawn broke, the city looked fragile, less like a kingdom, more like scaffolding. They went live again, not with spectacle but with evidence. Risay spoke plainly. Bruno didn't interrupt. No dramatic music, no tears engineered for sympathy. Just truth. The reaction was immediate and violent. Support surged, lawsuits followed. Executives released statements denying everything. Former collaborators deleted photos. Others resurfaced with their own stories emboldened. By evening, Risay's name trended worldwide. So did Bruno. Not as lovers. As a problem. They sat on the floor afterward, backs against the couch, drained. "I'm scared," Risay admitted quietly. Bruno nodded. "Me too." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "But I don't feel alone." He closed his eyes. "That might be the most dangerous thing we've done." Outside, the city roared, furious and alive. Inside, stripped of illusions, contracts, and safety nets, they remained two artists who had mistaken love for shelter and discovered instead that it was a weapon, a risk, and a choice. And for the first time, neither of them wondered what it would cost to keep choosing each other. They were already paying. And still they stayed. The courtroom smelled like old paper, polished wood, and restrained fury. Risay sat perfectly still, hands folded on the table, face calm in a way that frightened even herself. Bruno sat beside her, leg bouncing despite his effort to control it. Cameras weren't allowed inside, but the weight of the outside world pressed through the walls anyway, millions waiting to see who would fall. Across the room, the woman sat with her legal team, expression unreadable, fingers resting lightly on a leather folder that held years of secrets carefully curated to look like lies. "This is where stories go to die," Risay whispered without moving her lips. Bruno leaned closer. "Or where they finally tell the truth." The proceedings were brutal. Every private moment dissected. Every decision framed as strategy instead of survival. Risay listened as her past was turned into a weapon, her ambition painted as manipulation, her silence twisted into consent. When it was her turn to speak, the room leaned in. She stood slowly, heels steady, voice soft but unbreakable. "I was taught that power meant control," she said. "So I tried to control fear instead of facing it. That was my mistake." Murmurs rippled. "But loving him," she continued, glancing at Bruno for just a second, "was never a strategy. It was the one thing I did without calculation. The opposing counsel smirked, and yet love conveniently aligned with profit. Risset smiled sadly. Only because you taught us that art without ownership is theft. Bruno felt something in his chest loosen. This was her, not the icon, not the headline, the woman who survived by learning when to stop shrinking. When Bruno testified, he didn't play the hero. I stayed longer than I should have, he admitted. I ignored red flags because success sounded like security, but love isn't supposed to feel like debt. That line traveled faster than any song he'd ever released. The verdict didn't arrive with thunder. It arrived quietly, decisively. Settlements, exposed contracts, public apologies drafted by lawyers who had once threatened them. They didn't win everything, but they won enough. Outside, reporters shouted questions that no longer mattered. Bruno took Risset's hand, not to display unity, but because they had earned the right to choose it freely. Months passed. No penthouse, no glossy endorsements, just a modest studio filled with sunlight and dust and unfinished melodies. They argued again, real arguments this time, about chords and lyrics, and whether success had to look like anything at all. One night, Risset sat on the floor, back against the piano, listening as Bruno played something unfinished, something raw. "This won't chart," she said quietly. He smiled. "Good." She laughed, a full, unguarded sound that surprised them both. They released the project without warning. No press tour, no branding, just a note. "This is ours. Take it or leave it." The world took it. Not because it was perfect, but because it was honest. The money came later, bigger than before, cleaner, shared with people who had been silenced long before them. On the night they crossed the number everyone said they were chasing, there were no celebrations. Just the two of them on the balcony, city lights below, music drifting softly from inside. Risset leaned into Bruno. "Do you ever miss the illusion?" He thought for a moment. "Sometimes, but I don't miss who we had to become to keep it." She nodded. "Love didn't save us." "No," he said, "but it taught us how not to disappear." They stood there, not as a brand, not as a headline, not as a cautionary tale, but as two people who learned that when love becomes a masterpiece, it isn't framed to be admired. It's lived. Messy, costly, unfinished, and entirely their own.